Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joeline Hackman, and I'm a counsellor for Northern Beaches Council. Now, one of the things that I've always found so fascinating is the debate around the energy transition. And for me, after I looked deeply into this, what I understand is that it is so cheap and clean and healthy to transition to electric appliances. I know that if you have elderly people in the home or children or pets, that the rate of risk of asthma is increased by 20%. That stat is from the American Pediatric Association. And we know from so many people who have removed gas from their cooktops in particular and their heating that their health improves. So that's for me a critical piece. I'm married to a doctor. Health is really important. Aside from that, we also have the fact that bringing electrification into your home also saves you a ton of money. It's about $5,000 every year for the average home if you do change a few appliances when they break. So the idea is that if your gas cooktop breaks or your gas heater breaks or your gas hot water system breaks, then just replace it with an electric one. And it's been amazing to learn that the energy efficiency of these appliances just they don't emit so many fugitive emissions. They're just really efficient machines. So the ability for us to upgrade to these efficient machines that are cleaner, faster, healthier, cheaper is just huge. And so I have electrified almost all of my home, and many of my friends have. And I understand that that is a privilege because I own my own home. And not everyone does that, but we are trying to work out how we can bring everyone along on this transition. So, the next segment of people that I really want to help get involved in this transition and access this cost saving are renters and we people that are renting in apartment blocks specifically. So I have asked Brent Clark from Watt Block, and he's a Northern Beaches local, and he's an amazing guy that's been working on this for a long time, and he has really some amazing knowledge that I've asked him to share with you today. So Brent, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Councillor Hackman, for inviting me along. And I'll just bring up some slides and we'll get going on this presentation looking at solar for strata apartment buildings. And here we can see we're looking down a street at DY. DY is very close to my heart. It's the suburb that my mother grew up in. She grew up on Pacific Parade when there was a house there. There is now unit blocks, where all the houses used to be in Pacific Parade. But at the heart of electrification is solar, and we're going to have a look at solar for strata apartments today.
Fantastic. And thank you for bringing this to the people of DY. I love DY. It's such a hidden treasure, great beaches, great people, great community. Thank you for bringing this to them.
Yeah, and it is suburbs like DY which are going to be critical when apartments start to do this energy transition and electrify. And we've got 380,000 apartment buildings in Australia. We've got 84,000 just here in New South Wales, and in Greater Sydney, there's about 49,000. And the rate at which we add apartment buildings in Australia is about 6,000 a year. So when we talk about completing the electrification of strata buildings, here's a little icon, a little graphic image that gives you a bit of an idea. And really, solar photovoltaics are at the heart of electrification. We wouldn't be doing the electrification of apartment buildings if we didn't have solar power. And Australia is a world leader in rooftop solar. We've got over 4 million rooftop solar installs in the country. Over a third of houses in Australia have solar installed. But if we look at apartment buildings in Greater Sydney, stratas, it drops down to about 3.5% of those that have solar panels installed today.
And why do you think that is?
We've got a slide. We're going to pick that up, but I think the key thing is we've got owner investors and owner occupiers in our apartment buildings. And when it comes to the voting, that's called a split incentive. And that's one of the reasons we haven't had as much solar take up. But great technologies for electrification are reverse cycle air conditioning. It's better to heat your apartment with reverse cycle air conditioning than to use a gas heater or an electric heater. It's the most efficient method. And over time, we'll have more people getting batteries. And then at the structural level of these apartment buildings, if you've got common hot water plants, they'll move over to electric heat pumps. You'll get electric vehicle charging in the car park area to charge electric vehicles. And you'll be able to use heat pumps for heating the pool. And there'll be other energy efficiency items that you can do. That the target is to reduce the cost of living in every apartment by $330 per annum.
Amazing. Brent, can I just tell you, when we replaced our heat pump, our gas hot water system with a heat pump, it reduced our emissions by 25% and our energy bill by 25%. They are the superhero of this movement.
Absolutely. And I think the name heat pump is a little bit confusing for people as well.
Yeah.
If you actually just said to people, we're going to use a reverse cycle air conditioner to heat the water,
Yeah.
then people would understand what you're talking about. What's this heat pump thing?
Got it.
But if you go to New Zealand, they actually call reverse cycle air conditioners heat
Oh,
pumps over there. So it just depends where you are. But what are some of the challenges that we've got in owners corporations? And we used to call them body corporates. Now they're called owners corporations. We've got these split incentives between the owner investors and the owner occupiers. And then again, if you are a renter, then you've got an extra set of challenges that you can't make big physical changes. And we're doing this series of webinars on sustainability in apartment buildings, but we've actually got a whole separate presentation we can do on what you can do inside your apartment. And that is something that will be of interest to renters later on as well. Communication's not great in our strata buildings. Some strata buildings do have their own WhatsApp group now to improve communication between residents, but there is a lot of apathy just in strata, and things move slowly as well. If you want to get things fixed, you understand the timeframes, whether you're a renter or an owner occupier. Getting things fixed in strata is a slow process. There's a lack of information. We're trying to address that with webinars like tonight. Sometimes access to finance is an issue for strata buildings, and we won't spend too much time on this, but there are some embedded networks in about 1% of strata buildings, which are like microgrids, and they also add a layer of bureaucracy. So why would you want to put solar on apartment buildings? It's a clean form of electricity. It can lower the bills. It can lower the bills inside individual apartments, and it can lower the common property or house lights electricity bills. If you put batteries in, it can improve your energy security, and we'll talk about one example of that in Strata later on. It's a low-cost form of generation, and Saul Griffiths has said that solar in Australia is the lowest form of energy produced in the history of human civilization. It reduces our reliance on fossil fuels, reduces our CO2 emissions, it reduces network demand, and importantly, people don't think about this. If you make the power on top of your rooftop, you don't have transmission losses that you experience if you're making electricity, say, in the Hunter Valley and then sending it down to Sydney. So local electricity generation reduces your distribution losses. Now, if you're on a strata committee, every strata in New South Wales has to have an admin fund and a capital works fund. And it used to be called the sinking fund. Now it's called the capital works fund. Now, sometimes stratas get very poor interest on the money in their capital works fund. Sometimes it's even 0% interest. So that's one thing to check with your strata manager. But we had a look at one strata scheme that had bountiful roof space. And if they put down a large solar system, the energy savings that they would get from that solar system, if you converted it back to an interest rate, were actually 14% per annum. So if you think about it in that way, sometimes well-funded strata buildings are sitting on a large deposit of cash in the Capital Works Fund that's earning a poor return, and you could actually accelerate the returns through investing in a solar system. Now, this is a picture of the Northern Beaches, and it comes from the Electrify Strata project that we worked on over the last 18 months. And what it does is it actually shows every blue drop pin is a strata building in the Northern Beaches area. And there are at least 48 strata buildings that already have solar installed, and they've got a yellow drop pin. And there are about 10 embedded networks that we're aware of in the Northern Beaches. And we do know of one strata scheme in Newport that does have batteries as well now. So um, solar has started to migrate onto the rooftops of strata buildings in the Northern Beaches area. So there are a couple of steps to think about if you want to install solar on strata. So your roof condition, how good are the tiles? How good's the access to the roof? Is it shaded? What's the state of your meter board and your switchboard? Do you have smart meters for the individual apartments? And now this is one tip for renters. If you don't have a smart meter for the individual apartment, as a renter, you do have the relationship with the energy retailer, and you can make a phone call to that energy retailer and sometimes get a free smart meter installed. And so that's one thing that might allow you to get to time of use tariffs. And then you can implement behavior change around that time of use tariff in order to, lower your electricity costs. You can run your dishwasher, your dryer, your washing machine at off-peak times or shoulder rather than peak times. But let's jump back to strata. So you have to determine, the electricity usage and identify the size of the solar system in kilowatts. And you would have to develop some sort of business case and take this to the owners corporation, get quotes in, compare them, and then commission and install a solar system. And then after the solar's installed, you might want to do a post-installation compliance inspection as well. So,
Can I just interrupt for a sec? I've just got a question
yeah,
on the previous slide. So, say I live in a strata and I am keen to get this rolled out across my entire building. Obviously, I can go ahead and call and get the smart meter, which is great because it
yeah.
means that I'm not getting the whole bill divided by how many units there are. I'm able to measure my exact usage and the time. Are these the steps? Like, would I be acting as a leader and trying to implement all of these steps, or do I need to go to the strata, the head of the strata?
Yeah. So here's a couple of things to keep in mind. So if you're any owner occupier or owner investor in a strata, you have the right to put a motion on any annual general meeting or extraordinary general meeting that comes up. Just keep in mind that because a lot of our stratas aren't on electronic voting, you would actually have to get your motion that you want to be voted on maybe to your strata manager, say 35 days before the meeting, because if they have to post out and have 30 days, prior to the meeting, you've got
Yeah,
to get your motion to the strata manager. But keep in mind, any owner occupier or any owner investor
yeah,
can put a motion on this meeting, and that motion can be, we should allocate some funds to get a feasibility study on doing solar on the building, or
yeah,
heat pumps, or something like that. Or it can be just that, that one person's going to be tasked with getting a couple of competing quotes for solar and bringing it back to the next annual general meeting or
yeah,
extraordinary general meeting. So effectively, what you are becoming, and it's very difficult for a renter to do this. You'd have to be, an owner to
yeah.
kind of do
Yeah,
this, but you're setting yourself up to be the sustainability champion in your block.
love it.
And we'll talk a bit at the end about who you want to kind of get into your group or subcommittee
Got
to
it.
run with this a little bit later on. So,
Thank you.
now, just to give you a little bit of a feel, um, for what we're talking about, here is a strata building, and it's got 30 kilowatts of solar here. And in Sydney, um, a kilowatt of solar will generate about 4 kilowatt hours of energy over the course of a day. Now, so there's two different units that we're talking about. Kilowatts is what you measure the size of the solar system in. Kilowatt hours is the energy that's produced by that solar system. And kilowatt hours is what you get on your electricity bill.
Mhm.
And kilowatt hours is what you store in a battery. Okay. So the rule of thumb is 4 times the size of the solar system in kilowatts is what you generate in kilowatt hours per day. Now, a couple of other things just to get the dimensions, if you're thinking about how much roof space we've got, a solar panel, a commercial solar panel can be 2 meters by 1 meter. Um, Panels of the same size can produce more or less power. So have a look at the wattage of the panel. So a 570 watt panel will might be the same size as a 460 watt panel, but it'll produce more power per square meter. And so 1 kilowatt of a solar system might actually consist of two panels. The highest performance panels in the market might be the bifacial solar panels that you might have heard about painting roofs white these days to increase reflectivity. There
Yeah,
are now solar panels that can actually capture, if they're on a tilt frame, capture uh, power
both
from the
angles.
sun
Yeah,
and also reflected off the roof behind them. So
right.
that's what a bifacial panel is. Yeah. And the cost per watt to install on a solar on a strata building is higher than what it is on a house. So you might have heard 85 cents per watt installed for residential houses. On average, you'll be spending $1.31, maybe up to $1.42 per watt for a high-rise building because you've got more craning costs or lifting costs. You've got longer cable run costs.
Yeah.
You might have to build enclosures for inverters and batteries and things like that. So it's a little bit more expensive to do it on strata than it is on a house, but it's still world class in terms of the cost to install on strata in Australia is actually lower than the cost to install on a residential house in New Zealand.
Yep, and you're bringing more people along on the journey. And
Yeah.
for anyone whose eyes have glazed over with a level of detail, just know that Brent is an amazing person to talk you through all this detail. You can always just pick up the phone and make sure that someone who is an expert in this area can come and size up your strata.
Yeah. So we're going to just look at 4 different ways that solar can go onto a strata building now with a couple of local references. So just say you're more in like a townhouse or a villa kind of strata, and you've got quite a lot of roof space on top. Keep in mind, in most townhouses and villas, that roof is still common property. You don't own it, even if it's directly above your townhouse. And so you still need to seek permission to install solar on that. Don't assume that you can just install it without getting permission from the owner's corporation. But you can have a separate solar system for each individual townhouse or villa. This probably wouldn't really work on a medium rise, and it definitely wouldn't work on a high rise. Um, and here's an example at Beaconsfield Road in Newport, and you can see individual solar panels here and here that are for this particular building. And this is a bit of a green feature building down there. And that's the one that actually has the batteries installed in it as well, just near the Newport Arms. Now, a second way to do the solar system in Strata is to only have it connected to the common property meter. So this might be the meter that runs like the lift, the car park lights, the ventilation fans, if you've got a pool, things like that. And if we go down to Coleroy, um, this is an example of a solar system on the Horizons building, and it's powering common property. And also, the other thing just to note in this photo is you can see that this is a ballast weighted solar install, and those bricks are actually weighting down this solar panel system that's in a concertina format. And the benefit of that is means you don't actually penetrate through the roof membrane and cause waterproofing problems for like the penthouse owners in the apartment block. So that's something that people are always worried about water penetration. And here's an example of a solar system that uses those bricks to weight it down. Now, a third way of doing solar is using a solar sharing gateway. And we're not here to endorse any particular solar installer or product in the market, but because there's only one product globally that can do solar sharing on an apartment building, and it was created here in Australia, we're able to talk about it in different council formats, and that's the company called Illume Energy. And Illume Energy came out of Melbourne University about 9 or 10 years ago, and they're now exporting their product to the US and Europe as well. And the federal government gave them a $3.6 million Made in Australia, Future Made in Australia grant to keep manufacturing their product locally. And what it does is it allows you to have a single solar system on the roof, and it comes through their solar sharing system, which has an accounting software package that measures how much solar goes into all the individual apartments, and you can also send solar into the common property. And this is a way of making it fair and equitable across the apartments. So if you wanted to find one of those, we could go over to White Street in Balgowlah. And this solar system here just looks like the other solar system, but this white box here is sitting in the switch room. And that's the Illume Energy Soul Share. You can see the Made in Australia sticker on it. And it's diverting the solar into one of those boxes can divert it in up solar into up to 15 different apartments. And if you've got more than 15 apartments, you add another one of those boxes for each 15 apartments. So that's a third way of doing solar into apartment buildings. And then the fourth way is via the embedded electrical network. And if you're in a building that's got an embedded electrical network, you'll know about it
Yeah.
uh, because everyone will get their bill from the same energy retailer. And there's a gate meter, and they actually create a microgrid that's separate from the national electricity market. And a solar system that comes into the gate meter can feed into all the apartments behind it. So,
We should just say, Brent, as well, an
yeah.
embedded network is when the Strata is first built, they have an arrangement over a decade, 2 decades, however long the duration is, to stay with that energy provider. And that rate is fixed. And so everyone is sort of locked into using that provider. You can't just call up and change. And so that's why Brent says you'll know about it because
Yeah.
you don't have the normal
Now there is something
flexibility.
called power of choice regulation now that you can actually make a request to take your meter out of the embedded network, and but let's just say for the most part, if you're in an embedded network, people stay in it for a
Yeah,
10-year
right.
period. Yeah. Yeah. Um,
There's
uh,
a solution for that. It's fine.
Yep. So we've gone out west to Western Sydney, and this is a huge embedded network site. It's a microgrid, and you can just see solar on top of all these apartment buildings. And there's actually 24 batteries in a battery room at this site as well. But that's a little peek into, what the future of embedded network solar can be on apartment buildings. Now, a couple of other things to think about. Um, if you're going to put down a solar system that lasts 25 to 30 years, then you want to take your old rooftop that looks like this and turn it into this first before you install the solar, because waterproofing might only last for like 15 years.
Yeah.
And so you want to get your roof ready for solar, and that might mean re-waterproofing it first. We mentioned earlier, here's another example of using ballast weight the solar system down so that you don't have to penetrate through the roof membrane. Um, how do you get the panels to the roof? This is using a crane. This is using a solar lift, so they can take the panels up on a ladder. Um, when it comes to shading, if you've got trees or another building shading your apartment rooftop, then you might want to use the more expensive microinverters or DC optimizers. And the benefit of that is if you use a typical string inverter and you get shading onto one panel, then it actually reduces the performance of every panel in that string. Where if you use the microinverter or DC optimizer, you get shading on one panel, you're still getting the same performance from the other panels. Because effectively in that system, every panel is its own solar system and it operates independently.
That's a great way to explain that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the other thing is make sure that you get a monitoring app. And this might mean that you've got to set up a Wi-Fi or get like a 4G, 5G SIM card and pay an ongoing 4G, 5G SIM um, uh, subscription so that you can get the data from your solar system into a mobile phone app or onto a website where you can check it and check that the system's performing, that it doesn't have bird poo or salt or leaves or dirt building up on it. Because if that happens, then you need to call in a cleaning event and get those panels cleaned so that they're performing the best they can. Batteries. Here's a bunch of different brands that have been installed into strata buildings, and many more brands will get installed. I'll just call out this particular battery here. It's in the Wallara area, and they had an issue with a basement car park that used to flood every time there was a big storm, and it would damage their vehicles. And the issue they had was they get a lot of power outages, and the power outages usually accompany the storm event,
Mhm.
and what they did was they installed two batteries that their primary use is to run the sump pumps in the event of a power outage as a backup kit so that the cars don't get damaged by water with the basement car park. And that's an example of
So smart.
improving the resilience of your strata scheme. So if you've got a basement car park that's subject to flooding, think about getting batteries to keep those sump pumps running when there's a storm and a power outage.
The other
Now,
thing, can I just interrupt
yeah.
and say that my friends, whenever there's a blackout, they don't notice because, we're just energy independent. So you still have the power that's stored in your battery. And things like the garage, sometimes it's because it's electrically managed, it will just shut. So being able to have a backup with a battery, it just means that you don't even notice that there is a blackout. So
Mm.
so
Uh,
important to have this.
Yeah, and like so that in Strata, if you've got like an electric garage door,
Yeah.
some people don't have a manual override on that, and if you've got a
Right.
power outage, you can't get the cars out of the basement car park, right?
Yeah.
So, yep. Now, New South Wales government introduced a battery rebate on the 1st of November 2024. And it varies across postcodes, but on a typical battery, it might be $1,600 to $2,400 rebate on a typical size battery. Um, Here's a little case study from Camperdown. So back in 2021, Strata is raising a special levy to install a common area solar system and batteries, and that's powering their common property services, including the lift, and that tied in with something we'll talk about later, which is when the New South Wales government introduced the Sustainability Infrastructure Amendment to the New South Wales Strata Schemes Act. And just in case, a little bit of trivia for today is strata title was actually invented in 1961, I think, here in New South Wales. And our strata um, legislation has basically been copied and mimicked and replicated in at least 15 different countries around the world, including in Dubai, Macau, a couple of provinces in Canada, New Zealand, India, Hong Kong. So Australia actually created this idea of strata title, and it was created here in New South Wales, and it's actually been exported. That concept of which is different from what we had before, which was company title, where you had a corporation that owned the building, and when you moved to strata title, you had this concept of just owning airspace, cubic airspace inside the building, and the strata managing like common property walls and shared services and all that sort of thing. So,
Important.
um, yeah, okay. So here's an example for probably the first solar and batteries went in to a multi-tenant residential building in 2015. So 10 years ago is the first time that was done in Sydney, and more buildings have done that since. Okay, very quickly, there are two ways to pay for a solar system. Um, and we won't spend much time on this because in Strata, most of the time, you go with option one, which is owning solar outright. And that can be paid three ways. It can be paid from existing funds in the Capital Works Fund, it can be paid via a special levy, or it can be paid via taking out a Strata loan. But the other alternative is called a power purchase agreement, or PPA. And this is a form of solar finance. Um, it's an effectively it's you can get a $0 down solar install for a period of time, and that period can vary. So it might be 10 years, and for the first 10 years, another company actually owns, manages, operates the solar panels on your rooftop. And if anything goes wrong with it, they fix it. And they just choose to sell you power at a rate that's cheaper than the power that you would buy if you were importing it from the grid for that period of time. And then after the PPA ends, maybe after 10 years, then you've got another 15 years of lifespan, and then the owners corporation goes on to manage it and get the full benefit of it for the rest of the lifespan of the solar system. Uh, so let's just, everyone hears about rebates. We're just going to go through what the rebates are at different tiers of government. So federal government rebates, you've got small scale technology certificates, or STCs. They apply to solar systems that are under 100 kilowatts in size. And to give you an idea, that might be a saving on a 6.6 kilowatt solar system of $2,500, or about a third of the price. Um, this is what virtually all the strata buildings in the Northern Beaches and DY and Manly will install, is under 100 kilowatts. And but there might be some factories in Brookvale that
Mhm.
might look at that are stratas that might look at solar systems that are over 100 kilowatts. And then if they were to do that, then you would fall into a different federal government rebate called large scale generation certificates. Not as good for stratas because you don't get the full upfront benefit. You get a trickle feed of rebate in consecutive years over the life of the solar system. That's why everyone wants this one, because you get quoted net by the solar installer and the rebate's taken off, and you never have a cash flow impact for the amount of the rebate. So now, another thing, unfortunately, we've heard about this new $2.3 billion battery rebate that's coming from the Albanese government. It's not applicable to strata, unfortunately. That's for residential houses.
We'll keep working on that though.
Yeah, yeah, work to be done.
Yeah.
Then, when it comes to New South Wales government incentives, we've got the peak demand reduction scheme for batteries, which we mentioned earlier, came in November 2024. And there's also a little tiny rebate in year one and year three if you take your battery and put it into a virtual power plant, just a couple of $100 each time. And then on the 28th of February 2025, Prime Minister Albanese, in conjunction with Chris Minns, and launched the Solar for Apartment Residents, or SOAR rebate, which is specific to New South Wales. And it's a very, we'll talk a bit more about it. It's a very, very generous co-funding scheme for owners corporation to put in solar panels. It doesn't apply to batteries, but the New South Wales government will, for a limited time only, this is not going to go on for years, just till the $25 million worth of funds are run out. They'll do 50% co-funding, capped at $150,000 per apartment block. You've got to have between 3 and 55 lots in your apartment building. It can apply to individual solar systems, shared solar systems with Loom Energy or embedded networks. The payback needs to be under 10 years. You can connect up the common area meter, but you can't have more than 40% of the solar power flowing into the common area meter. You have to pay the balance from the owner's corporation, but it is possible to take out a strata loan for the balance if you don't have the funds available. But you can't use the power purchase agreement or the PPA finance that we were talking about earlier. You can get some funding towards essential meter board upgrades like replacing smart meters, as long as the cost of those upgrades don't exceed 10% of the total project value. It's only for strata buildings, not for the older company title. Not more than 30% of the solar generated can be fed back into the grid. You need to get 2 quotations from solar installers, and you've got to complete your install by March 2026. So go to this link and register an expression of interest today. Over 350 apartment buildings have already applied for it. And who knows, maybe it'll get cut off early when it gets to 500 applicants. Otherwise, it'll end in December this year.
This is extremely generous. That grant is so generous. I don't think I've ever seen a 50% rebate like this or grant. And I think one of the big things is that the New South Wales and the federal Labor government know how important this is, that we really need to get everyone on board. You know, being able to have cheaper energy shouldn't just belong to homeowners. We want to make sure that it gets into apartments, and importantly, when you're renting out your apartment that you own, that cheap energy also flows into the owner and to the renter. This is huge. Also, if your strata needs to access finance, there are many banks that are offering 0% loans for a period of time, just because they know how important this stuff is. It reduces their payout costs on insurance for all sorts of things. This is just critical that people get involved in this. It's cheap, it's important, and it's only for a short time. So,
And the other thing is, like, it's extremely generous.
yeah,
And also, you calculate the 50% co-funding
yeah,
on the cost of the solar system before you take off the federal government STC, which means it's even more generous,
right. Yeah,
right? So, it's a real look. A couple of years ago, we had the EV charging grants for Strata, and that
yeah.
was a $10 million program. This is $25 million. So even more for the solar. So just get your expression of interest in, and then start taking on your champion role inside your Strata and try and move this through the system. So
Oh,
we're not here to endorse any particular lender, but the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, that is a federal government agency, has signed an MOU with one particular strata financier called Lannex Strata Finance, and with this same program in the ACT, they did it with a different lender. And Victoria's had this same program as well for strata buildings. And so it's different in different states which one they pick. But there is this green finance, low interest rate loan coming. It might not be until early next year, but that can be paired with your New South Wales solar for apartment residence rebate, and that can give you a $0 down getting started into the solar universe and electrification of strata.
yeah, definitely write those guys down. They are a government organization. I know some of the people there, they're extremely smart and they're pulling all sorts of things together to bring down the energy costs for people, but also just get your strata to talk to your own bank or to other banks and shop around for these green loan products.
Yeah. Okay, so then what do we have to think about when it comes to an installer? So there's a couple of different ticks that you can look at. NETCC is New Energy Tech Consumer Code, and you can go and see which solar installers buy NETCC products. And then the other one is Clean Energy Council accredited, but now they've changed the name to SAA, Solar Australia accredited. Have they been in business for a number of years? Look at the ABN Lookup website. Do they have local office and phone number? Have a look at their previous customers that they've installed on, particularly Strata buildings. So you don't want people that haven't done Strata before learning Strata the first time out. Get someone that's an installer that's experienced on Strata, and make sure they attend your block before they give you a quote. Because a house they can quote remotely, but a Strata they really need to turn up and have a look around at what's going on, and try and find out if they're subcontracting their installation or not. We've got a list of these solar installers, and we've got a list you can click through and see references for the top 25 of them where they've actually installed on Strata buildings in Sydney. And then you can use that to help inform yourself and make your decision on which solar installer you want to use based on their reference sites.
Fantastic.
Okay, so next, property valuation uplift through energy features. So Domain is the online property site. In 2024, they did this study. It's called Sustainability in Property, and it shows you it's actually broken out a much more granular level than this. It goes into like capital cities and regional areas and individual suburbs. But across Sydney, you can get a property valuation uplift of about $70,000 on an individual unit if it's got all the energy efficient features like solar feeding into it, EV charging, double glazed windows, etc. But in particular, Manly is the suburb across all of Australia that gets the highest property valuation uplift for these energy features, and it can be sometimes as high as 35% in the suburb of Manly. So that just goes to show what the property uplift and the differential in property value is if you get all these projects loaded in. And double glazed windows is way harder than solar to get done in your strata building, but huge gains if you tick off all the boxes, move to heat pumps, get the double glazed in, you'll get a great multiple on that investment. And in fact, you'll make more money out of doing all these projects in your own apartment than going out and buying your next investment property. So the rate at which you get uplift is faster through bringing your old apartment through this curve. So in 2021, the New South Wales government amended the Strata Schemes Management Act to make it easier. They lowered the voting threshold to get solar panels onto a strata building. So before that, and it's not just for solar, it's actually for anything that reduces energy, reduces pollution, reduces landfill, helps with the recycling, any EV charging, and taking out finance for any of those things. They've lowered the voting threshold. You used to have a special resolution at 75% of unit entitlements as the threshold, and then they lowered it down to 50%. So now it's made it easier, and that's not everyone in the building. It's just those people that choose to turn up and vote. So you got 100 units, and everyone's got the same unit entitlement, and only 20 people turn up to the annual general meeting. Well, if only 9 people vote against solar, then that's not enough to stop solar going ahead on your apartment building, right? So it's very few votes that can actually carry this at an EGM or an AGM under that legislation change. And then we're just going to have a look. Okay, you might be able to pick which one of these people you are. If you're an owner in a strata building, join your strata committee. Once you're on your strata committee, work out what role is it that I might be able to play in electrifying the strata building. My skills more around like the accounting side or the engineering side, or am I a sustainability champion? Now, the apartment buildings that have the most success driving these projects have at least 2 out of 3 of these archetypes on their strata committee. So it's very hard to do it on your own. So rather than you trying to be a single person, there's 20 other units, rather than you trying to interface with 20 other people in the building and convince them to do the project. Go sideways in the strata committee and find the person that's got the other skill set that you don't have, and then join forces with them. And as two or three people on the strata committee with the different skill sets, then go and start educating the rest of the owners in the apartment block to try and get the project over the line. Okay, so um, the 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 buildings that have the most success, they've got at least two of these: the bean counter, the engineer, and the sustainability champion. And if you can get all three of those people onto the committee and activated, create a subcommittee, energy subcommittee, sustainability subcommittee, and then you can focus on these projects for your block. Okay, so we're at the end. Couple more resources. Free resources, we've got solar training, free solar training for strata buildings. We've got over 100 videos on our YouTube channel, and there's over 40 videos around solar installs on strata. We did that mapping project. You can go and have a look at the Northern Beaches map of all the strata buildings, find the nearest strata building that's got solar installed to your building. And if you want to join a WhatsApp group with 150 other electrification enthusiasts in Strata, you can scan the QR code and get going there. So, hope you've enjoyed Solar for Strata. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brent. Before you leave, I just have one question. At the very beginning, there was the checklist of things that people should do, and I loved that you've got the archetypes in there as well. I think it was point three was business case.
Hmm.
Where would I go if I'm a person interested in electrifying my strata to create a business case? Is there a template, some data?
Hmm. Look, what we would recommend, dig into this solar training course.
Hmm.
And see, the thing you need, there's a little bit of an education step first. Before you can create a business case, you sort of need to just get your head around the basics of what's the technology, what's the approval processes that I need,
Hmm.
what are the bylaws that I might need, and there's some example bylaws. And that gives you a picture as to, okay, well, this is not just a technology project. Maybe we're going to need a strata lawyer for the bylaws. Maybe we need a consultant to check the solar quote. Maybe we need a waterproofer to do waterproofing
Yep.
first before it goes down. Because basically, you've got to get your scope, and your scope might be more than just the solar system. You might need some meter board upgrades or some smart meters. So you've got to work out, yeah, okay, that all coming together. If we're in an old block with wooden cross beams and tile roof, do we need to get a structural engineer in to check the integrity of the roof before we put the solar on? So to build your business case, you've got to work out what are the components and then start plugging that together.
To
And
personalize it.
yeah, for your
And
own.
I imagine on the Electrify Strata WhatsApp group, you'd be able to duck into there and find an amazing person to chat with while
Yeah,
you're working out your business case. So
that's it.
love that.
There are people on that group that are actually you post a question in, and usually someone will come back. And you don't get too many pings on the group. It's not idle chatter there, but usually someone will pick up your query and try and point you in the right direction.
That's
So
amazing having a trusted person that's been through it to help you guide you through the steps.
yeah,
So what a great idea to start that.
yeah, and we just thought, look, who's the best person to learn from? It's actually the closest strata building to you that's already done the project. Is that
Absolutely.
is yeah, they've managed to jump through all the hoops,
Yes.
and you'll learn faster from them. And they're not trying to sell you anything. So another strata committee member who's done it is the trusted resource.
Yes,
Mm.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It was very informative, and I'm looking forward to a lot of people jumping on this group and working towards electrifying their strata. Thank you for breaking down the steps, Brent and Wattblock, and we look forward to talking with you soon.
Thanks so much, Councillor Hackman. Okay, catch you later. Bye.